Priority 1 message from Starfleet coming in on secured channel.
You are listening to the TrekRanks podcast, a member of the Tricorder Transmissions Podcast Network. This is episode 57, featuring the top 5 underappreciated characters. Welcome, Star Trek fans. I am Jim Moorhouse, and I am the host of the TrekRanks podcast. And tonight we have a pretty cool new angle for our topic on this episode, and that angle is underappreciated. And I like that because we've done a bunch of underrated topics on the show, pretty regular series here on TrekRanks. But this is like a little bit of a deviation from that because underappreciated is a very different thing. And I think we're going to have this is a good setup to have a real cool Star Trek conversation because I have no idea where we're going to go on this topic. You can define it however you want. Top 5 underappreciated characters. All right, so joining us tonight for this topic, 2 returning TrekRanks specialists, both making their second appearance after very long gaps, too long. First up, this topic was actually her idea, and I'm super fired up to finally get her back on the show. She was one of our best Trek friends, and she actually was on the first ever episode of TrekRanks. Episode 1, it's Heather Barker. Welcome back, Heather, to the show. She's one of our strongest voices here on Tricorder. Heather, go! You're here.
I'm 10 episodes too late. I've surpassed 47 to 57. And I would just like to put out there, if you'd like to hire me to come up with ideas for your podcast topics.
Heather is available for all of your podcasting needs. And also with us tonight from the England Quadrant, one of the hosts of the great 10 Backwards podcast, Mr. Rick Everson. Welcome back to the show, Rick.
Hi, Jim. Really happy to be back. Thank you so much for having me back.
I'm fired up. So we had Heather on our first show, top 5 comfort food episodes, and you were on episode 19, our top 5 Ben Sisko episodes. So, yeah, I've been trying to get both you guys back on forever, and I'm fired up.
I'm thrilled because I think this is the first time Rick and I have actually shared any airspace or talking.
It is, yes. I've said before on Twitter, like Heather, you're like my podcast inspiration. So many of the ones I listened to were because of your recommendation back when I sort of started getting into them. So thank you for
that. Perfect. It's so great, Rick. I am glad you guys are on this show together. All right, well, let's get into it. This is going to be an awesome conversation. I love this topic. I just want to start going. But first, we're going to do our quick TrekRanks recalibration.
What are you recalibrating?
Everything. It's a sweeping, a recalibration of all systems.
As regular listeners will know, general order number 1 here at the TrekRanks podcast is that we love Trek, and we love to rank Trek via some deep dive topics just to get the conversation started.
Infinite diversity.
In infinite combinations.
And as the Vulcan Master and young Angry Tuvok just said, our mantra here at TrekRanks is no wrong answers. Our show is about all the reasons we love Star Trek. We're not here to nitpick or to argue, but just to celebrate the greatness of Trek. We love it all, from TOS to TNG, straight through to Enterprise and the Kelvin timeline, and now Discovery as well. It's all fair game here on the TrekRanks podcast.
Black alert. Black alert.
And a quick reminder that Discovery Season 1 and Season 2 spoilers, as well as Discovery short treks, are potentially in play. So, we could see some Discovery talk tonight. We'll find out. And one more reminder that we use the term episodes as a quick shorthand phrase, but the 13 films are always eligible for selection as well.
Open hailing frequencies. Hailing frequencies open. On viewer.
And you can find TrekRanks on the interface links at TrekRanks.com and at the TricorderTransmissions.com. And you can contact me directly on Twitter at TrekRanks or at Enterprise Extra. And you can also call and leave us a message with your own picks at 609-512-LLAP. That's 609-512-5527. And for those of you enjoying all of our shows here on the Tricorder Transmissions Podcast Network, we've got a little bit of everything. You can support us via Patreon at patreon.com/the Tricorder Transmissions. Okay, Heather and Rick, why don't you guys let everybody know how they can get a hold of you on the Net Access interface? Heather.
I am LLA Posper on Twitter and also Instagram, but unless you like fencing photography, there's no reason to follow me there except for the 1 week I'm at STLV. So Twitter's where it's at, y'all.
Twitter is where it's at for TrekRanks, for sure. And Rick, how about you, man?
I'm mainly on Twitter at TrekFanRick or at 10 Backward.
Love that. And your current Twitter name, the Sacred Chalice of Rick, is.
Yeah, Sacred Chalice. I was so pleased with myself when I thought of that one.
All right, we are now ready to activate our level 1 diagnostic and get into today's topic.
Diagnostic cycle will be complete in 20 seconds.
So for this week's diagnostic cycle, we're each going to quickly pick one non-Trek underappreciated character from a film or TV show or literature, just to get a taste for what our Trek picks are going to look like. And this was not actually very easy to do. This is an interesting topic. So Heather, do you have a non-Trek underappreciated character you want to highlight here as we get into the diagnostic cycle?
I do. This was so difficult because I do feel like most of my favorite characters, or the ones that I think of foremost, are generally very well appreciated.
Yep.
And so I apologize if this is a bit of a cop-out, but I think that the 13th Doctor, Miss Jodie Whittaker, is highly underappreciated because she came in filling very big shoes, being the first woman doctor. And I think that the first season with her was so incredibly well done. There were 2 episodes especially that stood out as some of the most phenomenal sci-fi that I've ever seen. And I don't think she gets enough appreciation for all that she had to deal with across, coming in as the first woman, dealing with all this pushback from fans. I don't see her talked about enough. So she is my pick for underappreciated character.
That is an awesome pick. And I love it because when I think of her as being underappreciated, because I think that's totally accurate, it was also the expectations. There were such high expectations from whatever angle you were looking at that character, even if you were like a woman, couldn't wait to see a woman portraying the Doctor, or, some angry fanboy that was upset about it. Whatever the expectations were, it's almost impossible to meet those at that point in time of this franchise. So I can see, and that was kind of the reaction. It was kind of like, yeah, it's great having a woman doctor, but there was a lot of that. So
I felt like there was a lot of enthusiasm, especially from other women and men who were allies of women leading up to it. And then throughout this season, like I was watching it kind of behind the airings,
Me too.
but I just didn't see the reception that I thought I would see. I felt like there wound up being a lot of criticism, and that actually plays into some of my picks for this episode. When we talk about defining underappreciated, I think that is not just fan response, but also how they're handled by writers and so on. And so she just seemed perfect.
You just hit on my prime directive, so that's perfect. So how about you, Rick? Who was your underappreciated character?
This was a tricky one, mainly because I hardly ever watch non-Trek stuff.
Same. It's so true. I was like the guy that fired the phasers.
Good, that's a good one.
But yeah, it did hit me earlier on, and I thought, and I was thinking, because this kind of ties into how my prime directive goes, Bagheera from the Jungle Book.
Oh, yeah.
That guy is clever, and he's trying to help Mowgli out. Mowgli resents him the entire way through, doesn't listen. Baloo comes along, and he's all taken by him. Bagheera is literally underappreciated the whole time, when he's just working tirelessly to try and help this guy out and save him getting eaten by a tiger.
No, that's a very good one, and that covers a bunch of avenues with film and literature. That's a great pick too.
Yep.
Awesome. All right. So for I listed 2, And I chose two because both are so deep cut, no one is going to even know who I'm talking about. So the first, I hope you know at least one, but you're probably not going to know either one. All right, first up is from Twin Peaks, and it's the character of Albert. And he was played by the late Jose Ferrer, who was actually in Star Trek 3 at the con of the Excelsior. And he played this foul-mouthed, foul-tempered FBI agent that everybody loved to work with. He was like friends with Agent Cooper, but he was just always grumpy and complaining. And he was hilarious and interesting. And he was seen far too little in Twin Peaks. And I think he is underappreciated. And you guys know who I'm talking about?
No.
No, good. That's perfect. You're definitely not going to know this one. This one is from The Americans, who a lot of people have seen, but
it's on my list, but I haven't gotten to watch it yet.
It's a great show. There's this character. He was Agent Stan Beemans, who's like the lead FBI agent. Actually, it's another FBI partner. That's so funny. Anyway, it's his partner. The guy's name's Dennis Adderholt, and he's just like the coolest 80s like TV character ever. I want to watch a whole series about this. The actor is Brandon J. Dearden. He was a little bit of a heavyset guy with a big bushy mustache. He was awesome. If you've seen the show, you know who I'm talking about. He's kind of this background character on the FBI side. And I would watch a whole show about that guy. Totally underappreciated. If you haven't seen it, don't bother looking up. You'll never find it. Okay, this topic is interesting. Let's move on and let's jump into our prime directions and figure out how we actually narrow down our Trek lists.
I do not concur with your captain's decision.
She's following our prime directive.
Define prime directive.
So, Heather, let's start with you. What was your prime directive in defining your underappreciated characters?
I'm trying to give myself a time limit. I don't know if it's going to work. So when I came up with this topic, I was thinking about a character in particular who is on my list, so I'm not going to spoil that. But I was thinking about characters who I happen to really love that I don't feel get the appreciation that they deserve. As I went along, like thinking about other picks, I wound up going down a very feminist route, which I tried to steer away from that because I turned into characters that, again, are underappreciated by fans, but then also underappreciated by writers. And I think that those two work hand in hand. And so I didn't want it to be like this overly negative impression. Like, we're a positive show here at TrekRanks, right? And I'm a positive advocate. So I wound up picking characters. Some are a bit underrepresented in the way they were written and in fan reception, but others are basically heroes of the episode, that they are episodes that are well known, but when we think about that episode, we don't think about those characters. And so that's who I really wanted to highlight with a lot of them.
That is awesome, and it's actually really similar to how my list unfolded too. So I'll talk about that in a second. But Rick, let's get to you first. How did you narrow down your list?
Okay, this was a tricky one, but I kind of started to think about unappreciated, thinking, there was one particular one that got me that is in my list, and I just thought of a time where I thought, that character no one is appreciating what he's done. So I'm thinking very much in story, unappreciated characters, or where our other characters don't appreciate maybe the job or the effort, or even, what this character represents. And I sort of come away from an episode thinking, those guys are not appreciating or being unfair to these characters. And that's kind of where my list has come from.
That's cool. So yours is more of an in-universe list.
Almost entirely in universe.
Yeah, that's cool. See, that's so cool because mine is not that, and mine is more because I'll tell you, mine is very similar to what you did, Heather. I started thinking about what underappreciated means to me, and then I realized that nothing in Star Trek is underappreciated by me. I love it all. So then I started trying to pick characters that are maybe underappreciated by fans, and then I hit on just what you said, Heather. I kind of went to where the writers and creatives were underappreciative in how they portrayed that character, just in terms of quality or prominence or quantity.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit, I have a mix of both of those things. And yeah, that helped me frame it a little bit. So just characters that I think are maybe wrongly overlooked and not given enough credit. So yeah, this is gonna be really cool to see how it goes. And Rick, I'm so glad you have something completely different. That's gonna be okay. Third Romaticon. Let's get into the order of things.
I am a Jem'Hadar. He is a Vorta. It is the order of things.
And just a quick reminder on how we're going to go through the order of things. First, each of us will reveal our original TrekRanks 5 words and a hashtag summary to tease our pick. Then we'll reveal our underappreciated character and the episode that we think best defines that character. And at the end, we'll rattle off a few secondary system selections if any of us have any. And as always, if we have any duplicates tonight, you'll know it when you hear the Defiant Torpedoes.
I'm going to be shocked if we do.
Yeah, no, I don't know. We might. We'll see. Okay, Heather, let's start with you. What's your number 5 pick for your top 5 underappreciated characters?
Oh, man. All right. So this is someone that I think about a lot when I think of the episode. The episode is Plato's Stepchildren. So this is an episode that everybody knows because this is the infamous Spock and Uhura kiss. Yep. Which, it sounds really great to advertise it as the first interracial kiss, which there's, talk about whether it is or not. Then you think about, it was forced, blah, blah, blah. But there is one person in this episode that is the key to them surviving. So my 5 words are the kiss is overrated. My hashtag is Alexander the Great. And my character is Alexander. And I picked Alexander because despite the fact that he goes through a little bit of a journey, we see a lot of different things. He's the character that is a little person, for those that don't know. And he basically is kind of their contact point throughout the episode. And so he comes in, and what I really do love about this episode the most is that Kirk makes it pretty clear that, where he comes from, it doesn't matter what you look like. And that's a big part of what I take out of this episode. And Alexander is really comforted by that fact. But his empathy is with Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. And so he goes through a lot of emotions where he's been manipulated by these people for a long time. He's there really for their entertainment more than anything else. He gets really angry and he wants to wind up killing whomever he can. And at the end of the day, he's a very crucial part in saving everyone, and especially McCoy. And so when I think about this episode, and I think what most people think about is the kiss, and not Alexander. He's the hero.
Yes. I love this pick. It's so fantastic. I love the actor who played him, who was in the Wild Wild West, another one of my favorite shows, Michael Dunn. And I love this pick. He played Dr. Lovelace on Wild Wild West for anybody. It's so cool. It's the best part of that episode. There's no question about it. It's the best part of that episode is all the interactions with Alexander. No doubt.
Yeah. It's really one where, again, it is heralded as having that kiss, and this is a really great thing, and it was so controversial at the time, and it wasn't shown on many networks because of what it was portraying. And I think there is value in that too, and that's a whole other podcast, perhaps. But I do love that this is a time where we do see a little person, and we do get that really positive message, and he winds up being, a very the cornerstone really of this episode for me. And so I think of him when I think of this, and that's why I wanted to celebrate him.
It's really cool framing of underappreciated, because when you think about that episode, his storyline is 100% underappreciated. Rick, what's your take on Plato's Stepchildren?
That's fantastic. Alexander's story, he's kind of the epitome of underappreciated. And the way he's treated is entirely unappreciated his whole life. He's always been kind of the heart of that story, I think.
Yeah.
Because it's him who's had to go through this the whole time. The Enterprise crew turn up and have 45 minutes of this treatment, but he's had to live it.
I love that because it's underappreciated in the universe and out of universe. So that's awesome. Great pick, Heather. Okay, Rick, how about you? Who's your number 5 pick?
Right, my 5 words are crew mean to chatty man, and my hashtag is call me Hutch.
Oh no! I'm gonna start crying. He's so underappreciated. R.I.P.
Commander Hutchinson from Starship Mine. And in fact, when I said about my Prime Directive, this is the inspiration for the unfairly treated.
Yes.
It's always bothered me the way the crew treats poor Hutch. He does nothing but extend hospitality to the crews that visit his facility, a facility that literally clears their ship of a buildup of a crazy radiation that could eventually kill them.
Yeah.
If you take your car for a clean and valet, you might at the luckiest get a cup of coffee. He puts on buffet, drinks, they've got the whole chance to relax on our area, and he's just friendly and chatty. And what do the crew do? They mock him, they laugh at him behind his back. Even his own staff collaborate with terrorists and ultimately kill him. And all he's done is be nice and put on a little party for some people. I mean, they stun Geordie, these guys. They kill Hutch.
I know.
Specifically, they wished him harm.
It is brutal. Oh, sorry, you go.
And then to our crew, do they grieve for their fallen fellow officer? And do they regret how they treated him? No, they just dump a sheet on him and never mention it.
Oh, man. It's so brutal. So true. I have nothing to add to that. He is so underappreciated. In universe, underappreciated. It's terrible that he died. It's like, why did they have to kill him? Oh, my God. Heather, your take on poor Commander Hutchinson.
Yeah, damn you, Morgan Gendel, for writing it this way. No, I think that's an excellent example of these characters that are like totally great, awesome people that are sort of used as plot devices here or there. Or it's like, again, why did you have to kill him? But I find that this is also kind of a consistent theme with a lot of characters that are underappreciated. Like they pop in and they are this pivotal character for an episode, or just, the one staple, like really good person. And I think they kind of maybe assume that we're going to acknowledge that and then be sad because of the death. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But yeah, man, I'm on board with that. That's my kind of hero.
Yeah. That's a fantastic pick, right? Okay, all right. I'm going to completely change gears here. One thing I didn't mention in my Prime Directive is that I was going pretty big with my characters too. I hit on a lot of series regulars, of which this is one. And my 5 words and a hashtag: let the regulations be damned. Hashtag shields. And it is Captain Sulu from the Voyager episode Flashback, from season 3 of Voyager. I almost picked the Undiscovered Country, but instead I decided to go with Flashback because I think that's a little bit more appropriate. I like what we see of Sulu there. But when I was a kid, I'm not sure why, but Sulu was like my favorite character when I was a kid. I just always thought he was super cool. I always, you didn't want to pick like the big hero, so I always kind of picked Sulu as my number one. And I think he just gets short shrift, and he's for someone that was an original Trekkie in the 70s, when he shows up as the captain of the Excelsior in Star Trek 6, it's like such an epic moment. That's like a huge world building moment for Star Trek, that now it's like, oh my God, Sulu is not a captain of a starship out there. It's just expanding the universe in a really awesome way. And I feel like he is underappreciated as a character overall. And obviously there's the cool tie-in to the having a Japanese officer on the bridge as well, 20 years removed from World War II, which is what that meant, and obviously what it means for George Takei and his history with being in internment camp as a child. So pretty cool part of Trek history, and I feel like Sulu the character is underappreciated. Rick, what's your take on that one?
Yeah, absolutely agree. Sulu, there was so much potential, and he could have had so much more when you consider George Takei had campaigned for Sulu to get that captaincy since the second movie, and it took till the 6th one to get him. And absolutely agree. It's a fantastic choice.
I'm so tempted to go into the social commentary about how Asian actors are treated in Star Trek. I won't, but I think that this winds up being a fairly common theme with some of our Asian actors. I totally agree. I think that I feel like there novels where Sulu gets some better stuff happening as captain. I think there might be. I don't know. I wouldn't say that this is the best.
No, there's some truth there. And I mean, the memory engram, I would say about this episode, it should have been more fun. And it just wasn't a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But Sulu brings it, and he is awesome in it. So, okay, let's go to round 4. And Heather, what's your number 4 pick?
All right. Honestly, like, he should be a little higher in my rankings. It was really difficult to rank these. So again, not totally obscure, but one of my favorite Enterprise episodes is Carbon Creek. And I think that episode, when we talk about it, we really tend to focus on T'Pol, because it is kind of known as a T'Pol episode. Whereas my 5 words, which would be the one in the beanie, who is #willing to take the risk, is Mestral. Yes. I think that, he was so imperative and encouraging everyone to be like, we're here. Like, we need to socialize to survive on this planet. And not only did he do that, but he really, forged connections. Like, he found a love interest. And then he wound up saving people from the mine. And whereas, sure, this is a great episode for some character development for T'Pol, like, he again is the hero of this episode, in my opinion. So I think that I picked out a quote for him, and it was, perhaps if you spent more time observing human behavior, you might not have such a pessimistic view of him. And that was him talking to Paul, and she says, "Open your eyes, they revel in violence, blah blah blah." And he's like, "So did we in the past, but they just haven't realized their potential yet." And so, aside from being the hero of the episode, like, it's so Star Trek that I just think he is a character who should truly be honored as the star of that episode.
I love Mestral. He's fantastic. It's such a great pick. He's totally underappreciated in that episode. He is the core of it. And when you said you were going to do a quote, I thought for sure it was going to be, "I Love Lucy" is on tonight.
No.
I knew it was. All right, Rick, what's your take on Mestral from Carbon Creek?
Yeah, I love Mestral. He's an awesome character. He really makes that episode for me. I think it's kind of great that he pretty much embodies everything Starfleet is aiming for. He's the one who finds a new culture. Yep. And rather than to hide, he goes out and embraces it. He wants to experience it. He wants to immerse himself in it. And that's what everything we learn about Starfleet in Star Trek is doing. They delight in the differences. They delight in the exploring. And he's that example of that happening with the Vulcans.
Yeah, I never thought of it in that context. That's really, really good. That is so true. Wow, that's an awesome pick. I love that episode, and I love that character. And that actor, J. Paul Boehmer, plays a bunch of good. He also played the 29th century Borg in the episode Drone, and a couple of Nazis, but we won't talk about those.
No Nazis.
All right, let's move on to Rick. What is your number 4 pick?
My number 4, right, my 5 words: sentient life kept in cube. My more than nefarious fictional character. I'm talking about the hologram Moriarty from Ship in a Bottle.
Oh.
I was thinking a lot about Moriarty, and he's created for Data Sherlock Holmes holodeck program, and by an odd occurrence, he attains sentience. He's considered all intents and purposes alive and self-aware. So the crew pause him for 4 years, and then when Barclay accidentally unpauses him, they end up tricking him into believing he's free and sit him in a little virtual reality cube. I mean, I've seen a movie where living beings are tricked into being trapped in a place and thinking they're in a VR and being in a VR system. It's called The Matrix, and it's completely dystopian. I appreciate Moriarty's kind of a villain. He did try and take over the ship, and he's held officers hostage. I'm not suggesting we let him roam the galaxy straight off, but he is a living being, and they happily stick him in a cube. I mean, surely he could have some life and purpose on Jupiter Station, helping Louis Zimmerman with his holographic research.
I don't know if we have enough time to tackle this existential topic. Wow. He is a hologram, but wow.
Yeah. I just think they're not appreciating he is a living being.
That is a staggering pick. I love it. Wow. I don't even know. It's for sure they yeah, I can see how you're looking at it. They don't appreciate. I mean, they would never do it to a human, right? So that's the point, right? They would never do that, or sorry, not to a human, but to any sentient kind of living being. So yeah, boy, when the doctor from the EMAs from Voyager finds out about this, he is going to be pissed that they did that.
Yeah.
Heather, what's your take?
So it's really funny because apparently this episode was noted by Forbes as one of the top 10 episodes in Star Trek that explored the implications of advanced technology. And I would say hashtag not ready yet. As far in the future as they are, it does raise some questions still about, what we do with that AI. I think that, I think holodeck episodes get a bad rap sometimes. A lot of people like them. A lot of people don't. They feel that they're filler. I love all the Moriarty adventures. Like I don't know. I love all the holodeck stuff. I think it's fun. I think it's a nice reprieve from some of the more serious episodes. And yeah, he's a super intelligent person and definitely could have been served better than being stuck in a cube.
I will just say this. I'm starting to think we may not have any duplicates because these lists.
I told you.
Yeah, you did. These lists I love this topic. So fascinating. Mm-hmm. Okay. My number 4 pick to round out the 4th round is 5 words and a hashtag. Thankless task to follow Spock. Hashtag the second Vulcan. And it is Tuvok from Voyager. And my episode is Gravity. It's one of my favorites, top 20 at Trek season 5 of Voyager. And by the way, I would have totally picked Neelix for this topic as well as Underappreciated, but we just did a whole episode on him like 2 episodes ago. So listen to that one instead. I'm picking Tuvok. I mean, when you think about, he's totally underappreciated as the person who had to follow Leonard Nimoy in first to play a Vulcan as a series regular on Star Trek. And there's literally no bigger burden to try to play than that. And Tim Russ just crushes this character. He's stern and he's direct and he's unforgiving, but he's also got that just perfect little hint of humor and sarcasm and that right amount of being a little bit caustic. So it's a real tough balance. He pulled it off. I don't think the writers underappreciated him. I think they gave him some really strong, good storylines, but I think in Trek lore, Tim Russ and the character of Tuvok are underappreciated. And I love Gravity because it's where it all comes together. He's battling with his emotions, not only with his feelings for Nas, but also his annoyance with Paris, but he's also trying to keep his logical side and solve the problem on the ground to get them out of there after a few months. So great episode. Love that character. Heather, what's your take on Tuvok?
I'm on board with that. I think that Gravity is a really exceptional episode because you do, like, people, I don't know why people think that Vulcans don't have emotions. Like, that is a pretty common misunderstanding among Star Trek fans and beyond. And that's not the reality. And so I do love that you get to see a display of that and him trying to deal with everything. But yeah, I'm right on board with that. When you think about, the top Vulcans in Star Trek, I feel like Tuvok is often overlooked. And for me, he is one of the strongest characters of Voyager. When I think of Tuvok and Tim Russ, like, I can't imagine Tim Russ being anyone else. Like, I saw him in concert a couple times. He's been on stage at STLV with his band. And like he's like a whole other entity as Tim Russ. Like, he is Tuvok for me. And definitely just I feel like, T'Pol gets mentioned more than him. And T'Pol also deserves that, being one of like 2 main women in Enterprise. But for the time that he had got to play the character and for everything that he did with the character, especially that connection to his family, which is something that we didn't get as much of with Spock. That to me, I think, was just really phenomenal, and absolutely agree that he is underappreciated.
Love it. Rick, how about you on Tuvok?
Anyone who's ever talked about Star Trek with me for more than 5 minutes knows I flipping love Tuvok so much. He's definitely my favorite Voyager character. And so, yeah, I don't think anyone can appreciate Tuvok enough. Ever.
Perfect.
He is great. I feel maybe he was slightly underused through Voyager. There was a lot. They did give him some rich background things, but I think maybe they didn't always capitalize on it enough. They could have done a lot more Tuvok stories, but that might just be me. I would love to have had more Tuvok stories. So
yeah, me too. Although they did give him some meaty stuff too. But
so the angle that no one appreciates, that he had to follow Leonard Nimoy is the first regular Vulcan after Spock, is spot on, because he does not get the credit for that, because that's a huge job. That's a huge job. And yeah, he's done a masterpiece. He doesn't copy, he doesn't imitate.
Right.
Tuvok's own Vulcan, but he's still very Vulcan, and it's perfect.
Yep, I was just about to reiterate that. That is exactly why I picked him. Oh, perfect. Okay, let's move on to the soup round. Heather, what's your round 3 pick?
Oh God. Okay, I can do this. So
Heather hasn't settled on her order yet.
It's so hard. It's so hard. I wrote these, like, when I put them into my notes, they are in an order, and that's the order I'm going with, because I think subconsciously that is the order that I chose. So this is the penultimate character. She's not my number 1, but she is the one that I thought about when I was thinking about underrated characters, because those of you who don't know me, I am for about a year now, I have been longsword fencing, and I just recently got my own sword, and so a sword needs a name, and I needed to think about a character who would be worthy of my sword and who my sword would be worthy of. And one of my all-time favorite DS9 characters is, I'd call her a secondary character, but even then she just does not have as big of a part as she deserved. So my 5 words are named my sword after her. My hashtag is DS9's Edith Keeler. I only picked Sacrifice of Angels because it is the one in which we lose her, but it is also just a phenomenal episode. Zial appears in many other episodes by the 3 actresses that have played her. I do have to send special props to Melanie Smith, as she is my favorite portrayal of this character, who by now you probably recognize as Zial. She is so pure and compassionate and kind, and on a space station where we are at war and we have so much, dare I say, darkness. She is the sunlight there, and she is a catalyst for the relationship between Kira and Dukat. She is the catalyst towards pushing Dukat over the edge. I'm not going to talk about what happens with Damar after he kills her, because I hate Damar for killing her. But I wish, of all of the characters in Star Trek, I would have loved to have seen more of Zial, because I think that she really does embody that super positive, just optimistic, innocent persona that reminds me of Edith Keeler. And I think it was so important to have her there. I both love and hate that she connects everyone in this way, like being I don't want to call her a plot point or anything, but she's kind of this central character connecting a bunch of other characters together. I was really impressed with how she kind of came to and was able to stand up for herself, stand up against her father, and just, champion the fact that she was one of us. She was one of Starfleet, one of those very fine people. So, okay, that's it.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. This is probably gonna be my favorite pick of this episode. I didn't think of Zial, but I think most people kind of love Zial, but she's totally underappreciated in terms of everything she brought to that story, and it really sucks that they killed her. I mean, it was an amazing, powerful moment, and it might fall into that trope of women characters dying to further other stories.
Yep.
But she was an incredible character, and she certainly wasn't a plot point. There's no way. I mean, she was critical to everything that was happening. And it's my favorite Zial, by the way, is Sia Baton. So we'll see what Rick says in a minute. But, she did have 3 different actresses playing her, which is interesting. But great character, one of my favorites, and just an absolutely underappreciated element of DS9 for sure. Yeah. Rick, what were you going to say?
I was going to say I honor her by stabbing people in the chest with a sword named after her. So she lives on in my infamy as a swordswoman. That's
fantastic. Rick, what's your take on Zial?
Oh, that is a fantastic pick. Zial is treated unfairly. Her whole life is unfair to her. You know, she's basically kept prisoner by the Breen till, well, most of her early years, and then she has to go on her father's. She meets her father and has to go on his little personal crusade, and then she meets Garrick, and there's always this little chance of happiness going on, and then in a way, Zial represents that Cardassians and Bajorans can almost be unified in this very idealistic way, and then she's killed, and it's so harsh, it's so horrible, and it is, like Jim said, it's totally that thing where they kill a woman character to further the stories of the men, and it's appalling. And it's like, actually looking back at everything she did, everything she brought to the table, what could she have done if she'd kept going, if she'd survived? And it's
that's always the thing. We just talked about this on one of our other episodes previously about Kalar. And my biggest lament on Kalar is not about the trope or anything about that. It's just that if Star Trek had Kalar for 5 more, 6, 10 more years, the stories they could have told with her would be amazing. And it's the same with Zial. So it's this feeling of what we lost, not having there. Not to say that the moments that were portrayed weren't staggeringly beautiful and well done.
So. Yeah, I feel like they kind of don't totally fall into those tropes because like both of those characters, Zial and Kalar, like do have a lot of substance themselves. I think Kalar more than Zial. So I think that because like they show some development, they show agency and decisions, that they do stand alone, but definitely wind up falling into that by forwarding the story for other characters and particularly male characters. But it reminded me, because I did go back and watch some of these episodes just to refamiliarize, and you know, there's some characters that appear in my secondary systems that we talk about, like, you know, how much we see of them in an episode, how much we get to know them. And even in DS9, even in TNG, like all previous Trek has these characters who, you know, we get parts of, but we don't ever get like a full development. Like there's so much more that could have been done, but it just goes to show like what could have been had we seen more of them and had more time.
And you said it at the very beginning of that I mean, these characters were weighty. They did have a lot of stuff happening, so it wasn't they weren't just showing up and being kind of faceless entities.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to Rick's soup round pick. What's your number 3 pick, Rick?
Right. So my 5 words are: he is listed as missing. My hashtag: he saved the flipping planet. My choice is Will Decker from Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
Oh man. That's a good pick.
So he's obviously an ambitious young officer. He's put his time in. He's worked his way up through the ranks. He's gained command of the Enterprise. Obviously, a guy who shows a lot of promise. Overseen the refit, worked with the crew, rebuilt the ship from the ground up. And Kirk waltzes in, takes command. Who on that crew speaks up for Decker? Nobody. Nobody suggests that this is a little bit unfair. He worked with them on that refit for however long. And then later on, they have that incident with the engines, and Decker stops Kirk using the phasers because they're channeled through the malfunctioning warp drive. What happens? Kirk takes him off for a full dressing down. When he realizes that Decker acted correctly, Kirk still gets on his case with this "stop competing with me, Decker." Only McCoy calls Kirk on this behavior, and I don't think that's on Decker's behalf. Just generally, that's what McCoy does. Then Decker's ex-girlfriend is killed, so Kirk in a full move of amazing lack of sympathy, says, "Oh, you work with the probe that's impersonating your ex-girlfriend." And then at the end, Decker essentially sacrifices himself to join with the Ilea probe and Vija to stop it destroying the Earth. And what's his recognition? Kirk logs him as missing. Just missing. He should log him as sacrificed himself to save the world as a flipping hero.
Nothing to add to that. That is, I mean, in universe, I love your list. There's nobody more underappreciated than Will Decker. That guy got screwed. Oh, Kirk, what are you doing? That element of the story is just brutal. That's fantastic. Heather, any take on Will Decker?
It's hard to add to that. It really is. I am on board. I love this because I knew that, like, the rest of my picks, there's a pattern, I'll say, and so I was looking forward to having some more diverse characters, especially male characters. Yeah. Because it's easy for me as a woman to look at a lot of the women in Star Trek and be like, hey, now. But I think it's important to realize where, Captain Kirk comes in and, forget you, Will Decker.
Plus, Will Decker's dad also died in a fiery sacrifice. And I'm just going to whisper this. We're not going to talk about it. Ilea dying is also another woman dying to advance the plot. Okay, let's just move on. We're going to move on from that. Okay, my soup round pick is 5 words in a hashtag. Unprepared host conquers her fears. Hashtag I don't even like Ractigino. And it is Ezri Dax from Penumbra from DS9. That's my episode I picked. The beginning of the conclusion of the Dominion War arc. And when you put it into context for this character, it's impossible to think about what they did with Ezri Dax in that last season of Deep Space Nine. This is like the most dense Trek series ever. They're going into their final season with a dozen prominent characters and just tons of storylines. And they're going to weed in a new character thread through one season and make it work and make people care about her. I love this character. And plus she was replacing one of the most beloved characters in the history of Trek with Jadzia too. So I think it's incredible what they accomplished and what they did with her. And I think that character is completely underappreciated in Trek. I picked Penumbra because I love that in that episode she just decides on her own, I'm going to go save Worf myself if you guys can't save him. And you see that whole story arc there where they finally kind of talk and fight and have sex and then realize that they're really not going to be for each other. So, and they move on. So it's an amazing episode, amazing character. I love Ezri Dax and she's underappreciated. Heather, what's your take on Ezri?
I'm going to be that Klingon on the USS Glenn in Discovery that goes, shh.
Understood. Okay. All right. All right, Rick, any take on Ezri Dax?
Oh, Ezri. Okay, 3 things to say on Ezri, really. I absolutely love Ezri Dax so much. There are... Heather, you put a poll on Twitter, I think in the last couple of days. Would you say Star Trek has ever saved your life?
Mm-hmm.
And while I wouldn't say that per se, Ezri Dax kept me going in a very, very, very bad time.
Oh, interesting.
It's not a great tale to tell on a very positive podcast like this, but essentially, I'm massively thankful to Ezri Dax for keeping me going through a terrible, terrible time. And I was really fortunate that I got to thank Nikki DeBoer personally a couple of years back for that as well. And beyond that, yes, absolutely, she gets no credit for the fact she had the hardest job. She had 1 year to follow an immensely popular character. It was a nightmare for anyone to come back in on that. To follow Jadzia Dax and you've got 1 year to do it as the series comes to an end, but she does it. She's brilliant.
Yeah, they really did a good job. Hey, without going into the details, what was it about it that helped her character helped you? Was it because of the way the storyline was told, or the character kind of conquering her own?
I think it was about being pulled in many different directions and having a lot of different expectations upon you.
Interesting.
Yeah, that was kind of where I was really relating to it.
Well, that's awesome. Thanks, Rick. Appreciate that. Let's all right, we're going to talk about her again. It sounds like let's go to the top of round 2. Heather, who's your number 2 underappreciated character?
All right. If only we could have segued. I mean, I guess it kind of is a segue. But yeah, so my 5 words are "Don't flirt with me, Julian." Hashtag she's a counselor, not a doctor, which, I mean, technically they can be both. But the episode I picked was actually After Image, which is her main episode, her first real main episode on season 7. And she is kind of delving into whether or not she, Ezri Dax, wants to stay on the ship. She's kind of made up her mind. So she is there kind of helping Garrick deal with his claustrophobia, his panic attacks, while kind of doing a lot of self-introspection and figuring out, her own story. And, again, just to reiterate that, Ezri came after probably my second favorite character in Star Trek after Spock. Jadzia is just, I think, the most phenomenal woman in Star Trek. And yeah, so again, we have this instance where we're trying to I want to believe that our characters get to stand on their own, and it's not so much about filling shoes, but I think that because of the Trill, like that's really what happened. And we only got 1 season with Ezri. I think if we had had more time with Ezri, people would have come to love her more. But we have, a bona fide counselor on the ship, or on the station, which is like such a big deal. We've not seen that since TNG. And I just love her. I love that they went with someone who was different from Jadzia, but who also was just like this extremely, empathic and intelligent, but still kind of learning the ropes. And so you can connect with her more because, again, she's not a perfect character. She is someone that is learning as they go and learning about themselves. And so for me, that really resonates. And I feel like when we talk about DS9, we talk about Jadzia, and Ezri doesn't get the recognition that she deserves. She's just, I think, a really phenomenal character.
I was killed here. I mean, Jadzia was. I try not to think about that. If I did, I'm not sure that I could come back here. It's a strange sensation, dying. No matter how many times it happens to you, you never get used to it. It must be a little disconcerting for you, knowing that I have Jadzia's memories. No wonder you're uncomfortable.
It's a lot to get used to.
Tell me about it.
That was actually a perfect segue, connected right up to my pick. Ezri is awesome, and After Image is a great pick because of all the things she starts learning about herself and being joined in that episode. So I love it. Okay, Rick, let's go to your round 2 pick. Who you got?
Okay, my 5 words are "Only Guinan will help her" and hashtag Picard can't help. I'm talking about Beverly Crusher in Suspicions.
Ooh.
So, I didn't even realize when I picked this. I think today is like the anniversary of when Suspicions first aired as well. But,
interesting. Actually, well, let's get this out of the way since my pick is next. My number 2 pick is also Dr. Beverly Crusher. So now we have 2 duplicates up. That's crazy. So you picked Suspicions, and I'll just give you my 5 words and a hashtag, then we can all kind of chime in here. Should have been front and center, hashtag the dancing doctor. And my episode was The High Ground from TNG season 3. So Rick, back to you. Let's talk about why you picked Beverly.
Okay, Suspicions has always bugged me a little bit. I love the episode, but at the start, Bev's essentially fired, and she relates the story to Guinan, and it's because she performed an unauthorized autopsy. Picard's very specific, very emphatic. He can't protect her, and she's basically packing to leave. Guinan sort of brings it all out, and thanks to her, Beverly's then motivated to commit some further crimes, which ultimately prove the Ferengi doctor was murdered, and everyone's forgiven. But all through that, where the flip were her actual friends? Why is Guinan the one who comes in? I kind of keep thinking of that episode. I think it's, I'm sorry to bring it up, Meridian on Deep Space Nine, when Jadzia is going to stay on that other planet, and doesn't she get a stream of visitors coming to see all the regular crew coming to see her and wish sort of wish her well? Beverly doesn't get anything like that. Nobody comes to see her. When Riker wants to commando raid another world because he's in love with one of them in the Outcast, Worf's like coming in, yeah, let's go do that. and nobody cares. Nobody's, he's not fired for that. Beverly Crusher's fired and nobody helps her. And I just kind of feel like the crew aren't appreciating everything she's done.
Oh my God, this is so funny. So this is perfect. So because you're picking the in-universe Beverly Crusher for Suspicions, who's totally underappreciated in that episode for everything that she did to prove the murder and save the day there. So I picked her because she's just this amazing character that should have been front and center for the entirety of TNG. But not only did they not do that, they fired her for a season. Gates McFadden, which is just crazy to me, who's such a great actor, such a good person. The character had everything, amazing backstory. The writers and the creators of TNG at the front end underappreciated the character of Beverly Crusher for sure. It's definitely a case for me of what could have been. And I picked the high ground because I just love the moment. This is, for me, is the definitive Beverly Crusher episode where there's this terrorist attack. Things are going crazy. Picard and Data and Worf are just like, we need to get everybody out of here. Get up, get out of here. And Crusher's like, 100% not leaving until the medics get here. I'm going to help these people. I'm not going. And Picard just quickly realizes, like, yeah, of course you're not leaving. Nope. And I'm not about to get you out of there either. Because as Riker says, I don't want to greet her in the transporter room when you beam her up. So love that. She's just an absolute hero. She's a super consistent character through 7 seasons and all the movies. And I feel like they could have used her in so many more ways throughout TNG's run. So that's 2 perspectives on Beverly Crusher. Let's hear yours, Heather, on those.
I appreciate both of you so much right now. So look, most of the women in my life, adore Beverly Crusher, and she is up there on a pedestal because for a lot of women my age, she was, one of the first women in Trek that had this position of authority because she was a doctor. And yet we still have discussions among, our women's circles about how unfairly both she and Deanna were treated. I mean, honestly, sometimes I feel like Guinan was the most well-treated woman on the ship. But yeah, I think, again, this just kind of highlights where you have these strong women characters that they're there for the most part, aside from her break for a year. And she is replaced by another woman at least. But you have these 2 women in these prominent positions for the entire 7 seasons, and yet you don't get a lot of conversation, like normal conversations between them. You get them talking about the other men on the ship. You don't get to see that intimacy that women built together. And to me, it kind of relates again back to, like, yes, there have always been women creatives working, writing some of these episodes, but it kind of goes to show how some episodes the writers don't quite know what to do with the women. And so I think that this was a great example where she's essentially fired, and like, of course everyone would be concerned. Like, we've been with them for how long now? We know how much they care about one another. That makes no sense that no one would be for her or be there for her. And so I think that, the women kind of get fumbled around. And so I didn't pick Beverly Crusher because she is, I think, a very celebrated character in a very like, despite the fact that yes, she is underutilized and underappreciated a lot of times, she still is very well known. Again,
I'll say this because your summation's perfect. It's a couple of notes. She's totally not underappreciated by fans. Fans love Beverly Crusher, so that's great.
Yeah,
she's the perfect fit for Rick's pick in universe, and then for mine, it's all about the creatives. It has nothing to do with the character and how she was received. It's all about the fact that she should have been utilized more. And I'll say this: I didn't realize this when I picked it because I love The High Ground. I think it's a totally underrated episode. Guess what? Written by a woman, directed by a woman.
Mm-hmm.
So, interesting side note.
Yep.
All right. Any final thoughts on Beverly there, Rick?
Yeah, I kind of just want to relate a little story. Years ago, there was a local Star Trek group that I went to, and they would actually get episodes taped on VHS in America and sent over. So I remember when we watched Descent Part 1, and there's that moment where I think Riker says to Picard, everyone down on the planet who's going to be in command of the ship, and it cuts to Beverly, and they're going to so Picard's putting Dr. Crusher in command. And literally everyone in that room, I'd say probably 75% of them, burst out laughing. And because I was teenage at the time, and I always thought, it was like, I don't think that's that funny. She is a commander. But I always thought that scene was maybe set up for laughs. And it's like, as I watched it again and again over years, I thought, that scene's not set up for laughs.
No way. Yeah.
It was bothering me, like, why did they laugh? What's funny about that? And that kind of like was like a little sad lesson in like the attitudes, and even amongst Star Trek fans that you would hope would be a little bit more enlightened. But people found that funny, and I never ever understood why. And to this day, I still don't.
For sure,
she was brilliant. She blew up a Borg ship.
Oh, so. She was great. Actually, that's actually would have been a great pick too. She was awesome in that episode. All right, well let's go to round one and see if we're going to just keep it real here, because I think our number one picks might just be doing that. I know mine is. I'm gonna get heated on my number one. All right, Heather, who's your number one underappreciated character?
I'm not going to get heated, but this character I think really stands out for me because Enterprise was my first live Star Trek on television. Yep. I made it through 2 seasons. And then I bailed because there wasn't a lot there for me. And unfortunately, that's when Enterprise kind of picks up around the 3rd season and everything. My 5 words are more than an evil empress. And frankly, I struggled with a hashtag. The episode that I picked for Hoshi Sato was 0 Hour.
Oh, great.
And in that episode, she is, working to help them destroy the sphere, and she is really sick. Like, she has just been kidnapped and put through a whole lot of hell. So she is like near debilitated. They are Archer is like breathing down her neck, like, you need to do this. Like, you need to break this code to make this happen. So my hashtag was something like, working while sick or something lame. As a person with a debilitating illness, like, I send so many props to her for getting it done while being like on death's door almost. And so my number one underappreciated character in all of Star Trek is Hoshi Sato.
I love it. Great pick.
So it really is the culmination of having a character like Hoshi, who starts off kind of promising. Like, she's teaching, she is, knows all these languages. She's a linguist, she's a code breaker. Like, she can do so many amazing things. They bring her on, she's excited to get to space, and then she's afraid to be there. And a lot of how they characterized her kind of fell into some really scary tropes and a bit of, it's a strong word to say xenophobia, but the way that Star Trek does handle some of its Asian characters is questionable. And while I do appreciate her journey throughout the 4 seasons of Enterprise, I feel like we never got to see who she really was and a true reflection of her abilities and all of the things that made her outstanding.
Well, that's a great pick. I love 0 Hour because it's probably the moment where she tries to end her own life to try to save the day by knowing that they're about to violate her in terms of her brain and getting that answer. That was such a hero move. It was so great. So I love Hoshi. I know your strong feelings on her. Totally legit. I always look, there's not enough moments. There's not enough of them. And for sure, Enterprise, in terms of being male-centric story, was not a step forward for Star Trek at the time when you would like to see kind of a linear.
Yeah.
You'd like to see linear progress. Doesn't mean it's bad, but it's not a linear step forward. No one can argue that. There's only 2 women in the cast. It doesn't. That part made no sense. Still a great series. Still something I love, and I love when they give Hoshi great stuff. She's fantastic. So I've always really appreciated the character and tried to look at it from that angle. But it's like with Beverly for me. It's like there's so much more they could have done with this character.
I definitely feel like the women in TNG had larger roles. And I mean, frankly, T'Pol is the main woman character in Enterprise. Like Hoshi is there. Hoshi gets assigned to figure out, whose favorite cake. I like Enterprise, so I don't want people to think that I hate Enterprise. I have watched it in its entirety several times now, and I love it because it's Star Trek, and I love it because it's Enterprise. I do think that they could have done better for the women in the series.
It's a constructive way to talk about it. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Rick, how about you? What's your take on Hoshi?
Hoshi's on my secondary systems. She was a strong contender for my list for a long time, but ultimately my list is a little bit, I don't know, almost irreverent.
Yeah.
And I found I couldn't talk about Hoshi without legitimately getting angry at points.
I knew round one was going to get real.
But Heather's mentioned her, so everyone stand back. No. I can't really add much to what you've said, Heather, because you are absolutely correct. Hoshi is severely underused and underserved and unappreciated.
Yeah,
there's so much potential in her character, and I think when you get something, and the names, the 2 parts that ended Series 1 and started Series 2,
Shockwave. Yeah.
Shockwave, thank you. Yeah, in Part 2 when she's having to crawl through the air ducts and everything to get to different quarters, and oops, she accidentally got a uniform snagged. I'm just like, grow up, dudes, grow up.
That's a perfect example, because the reality is that's a cool scene to give her an action moment where you have to crawl through, and then they add that moment, which is like, all right, that's dumb.
They do that like pretty commonly with Hoshi, not necessarily a moment like that, but like even I can't think of the episode name, but where she goes to the planet to talk to the Beauty and the Beast, basically.
Oh yeah.
With
Exile. Yep.
Yeah, and again, it's like she's being kidnapped, she's being held against her will. Like there's always this damsel in distress thing happening where then she has some shining moments. Whereas even Empress Hoshi, like, okay, here she is with like this full agency, but it's like she slept her way to the top. So like, again, for women, it's just not the best thing ever. Like, yes, there are a lot of really strong points for Hoshi within the 4 seasons, but they may not be what you think, basically.
Totally get it. Yep. Okay, Rick, who is your number 1 pick in universe on your list? I love this.
So my 5 words: no box on his chair, and my hashtag. I'm going for longest.
Of course it is. It had to be this one.
Yeah, I'm going for longest hashtag ever. Any other ship, he'd be lieutenant, maybe lieutenant commander by now. I'm talking Harry Kim. And I've particularly picked Matrix Zero for that box on the chair moment.
Oh, that hurts. Yeah.
There's very little Kim in that episode, really, but it exemplifies that weird attitude. I don't get why he's still an ensign. He's the operations officer. He stands a night watch. He contributes immeasurably to the ship. Every week we see him do something. He comes up with solutions. He puts so much in. In Nightingale, he has to beg for a chance to command a mission. And while he does make mistakes, I kind of feel like well, actually, who's overseeing his command training there? Is Janeway? Is Chakotay? No. What support's he got? None. So at that point where Paris gets his Lieutenant Pip back, he's to see his friend get demoted to ensign and promoted back while he's untouched. And Kim says, "No, I didn't see a little box on my chair." And everyone laughs. Why are you laughing at him? Joke to you? And it just appalls me. It really is.
I'm laughing.
I mean, I'm doing my list in an irreverent way for fun, but it is harsh. It is bad treatment, and to my understanding behind the scenes, I think there really was a problem where he didn't get promoted there, and they didn't write that in. So it's kind of
well, there's the in-universe answer. There's really no explanation for why they wouldn't have.
There's no excuse. No.
The out-of-universe answer is the same reason Voyager didn't have the sustained. They had some serialization, but not like sustained serialization where the ship was falling apart and things like that from week to week, because he was the ensign, and so that's he's going to stay the ensign because we need the lower rung person in the cast. That's the out-of-universe reason for why that was never going to happen. But that's a great pick because it's totally legitimate. I thought about Harry Kim, but I didn't go that direction. But in universe, there's really nobody else you could have had at your number one. Heather, what's your take on Harry Kim?
Oh yeah, for sure. And I'll only briefly mention that we've now mentioned 3 Asian characters that fall into this box, and we'll leave that conversation there, I guess.
Wow,
but
that's very interesting.
Yeah, I think Harry is known for being this underappreciated character to the point that he was promoted a couple years ago at STOB by Star Trek Online, that Garrett was. So it's turned into a joke at this point, and I think that really highlights the reality of how this character was portrayed. And it was similar to Hoshi, and always winding up in these situations where you're being kidnapped, you're like being tortured. There's something going on there that forwards the story, and especially for Harry Kim, because he was so prominent. Like, I never felt like he was a secondary character. I felt like he was a main character on the ship, and we got so much of him. So to see him constantly get the shaft that way, he deserved better.
When I think about everything we've been through together, maybe it's not the destination that matters. Maybe it's the journey. If that journey takes a little longer, so we can do something we all believe in, I can't think of any place I'd rather be, or any people I'd rather be with.
To the journey.
You're here.
To the journey.
All right, well, on that note, and a note that you just made, Heather, I am going to go to my number one pick because, wow, I'm kind of floored a little bit right now. All right, 5 words and a hashtag. And this is the one where I'm going to get a little bit heated, so I will be beeping myself. Botanist, teacher, wife, and mother.
Yes!
Hashtag won't run from a fight. In the Hands of the Prophets is the episode, and the character is Keiko O'Brien. And there is nothing that annoys me more in Trek than people ripping on Keiko Ishikawa O'Brien. And if this pisses you off, well, that's just sexist bullshit. It's really simple, because Keiko is not a battle axe. She's not a shrill. She's a fucking supportive wife and a real person. And she's half of the most real relationship ever portrayed in Star Trek. And she's awesome. And I'm swearing because this topic deserves it. And I obviously picked In the Hands of the Prophets because that's the one where she just stands up. She's the first person to stand up to Vedic Wynn when she's introduced. She sets the tone right from the start, from the fight against Wynn for the next 6 seasons. She's awesome. She was always going to be my number one choice when Heather suggested this topic.
Our studies of the wormhole have shown that it was formed by unique particles we call verterons that are apparently self-sustaining in nature. This begins to explain how a ship at impulse can safely pass through without...
Ships are safely guided through the passage by the hands of the prophets.
In a manner of speaking.
Not apparently in your manner of speaking.
Perhaps we should discuss this after class.
Do you believe the celestial temple of the prophets exists within the passage?
I respect that the Bajoran people believe that it does.
But that's not what you teach.
No, I don't teach Bajoran spiritual beliefs. That's your job. Mine is to open the children's minds to history, to literature, to mathematics, to science.
And I love Rosalind Chow's portrayal of Keiko. She's fantastic. And sure, you can, nitpick a couple things, but it's just a real relationship with her and O'Brien. And she's so supportive and interesting. And if you don't like her, it's just sexist bullshit. Sorry. That is full stop. And then this other thing that just Heather mentioned, that's our number one characters are all Asian. It's the fourth Asian character. So there's something to that here, right? I mean, that's not something we usually try to get into on TrekRanks, but I think that says something. So, Heather, what's your take on Keiko?
So she's right there on my secondary systems. I only didn't bring her up because I did not want my top 5 to be all women, because I was a little bit worried about going down that there's the angry feminist characterization that people would lump on me. The conversations that I see about Keiko, especially from men, sorry guys, is that they strongly dislike her. And I will be honest, with their relationship, there are times where, yes, I do feel as though that communication is pretty accurate. Like, we get annoyed with each other when we're in relationships. And so, like, sometimes Miles and Keiko kind of go at it and they snark at each other. And sometimes for me, it's a little difficult to watch just because of previous relationships that were bad relationships that I were in. However, like, this is a woman who, went along with her husband to do this, to go in the station, who didn't really want to be there, who, founded a school and, like you said, stood up to Kai Wen, who's like the worst freaking villain. Like, I'm sorry, but Kai Wen is worse than Dukat. That can just be a whole other episode. Stood up to Kai Wen, is a mother this whole time, is allowing, Miles to have his own growth and to deal with everything that he does. I think she's just phenomenal. And it really, when I hear some of the pushback, like, I do understand some of it, but I think that it is really a call to kind of question what it is within you that is criticizing her.
I think that summarizes it perfectly. Rick, what's your take on Keiko?
I'm applauding you so hard for that choice in my head. It's spot on. I wish I'd thought of Keiko because she is so unappreciated in all ways. I find it criminal on Deep Space Nine that they shipped her down to Bajor for like a couple of years and they sort of find every excuse to keep her out of the way, because when they do a good bit of storytelling, the idea that there's a marriage there, a working marriage with kids, and all the compromise and all the little bits that marriage entail, I think they do it quite well, because you don't stay married to someone without getting irritated by them for a little now and again. You don't always have this blissful romantic conversation all the time. I find Keiko and Miles' marriage to be pretty real, but hugely underserved. And then poor Keiko is massively ridiculed for it a lot of the time. Mm-hmm. But it's huge. She's hugely unappreciated.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't pick her because I pick her 100% because of the fan reaction to her. I actually like when I wouldn't use the term shipped off to Bajor. I liked that storyline because I thought it was real. It's like, she doesn't want to just be a teacher on a space. Yeah. That's not her calling, her passion, her profession. So when they set that up, I thought that's cool because now she can actually do it. And I really like that dynamic between her and Miles, because it's not easy when you're living apart. I did that for 2 years with my wife in one city and myself in another. So I like that part of it.
No, it's massively real, and it's very much in the I've come here for you, but I need to do my thing.
Yeah.
There's a cynical part of me that just feels it was written because they didn't really want to bother with Keiko to an extent. And I might be being over cynical and over.
Yeah, I don't think that, but I get that. I mean, there might be a little bit to it, but I mean, it's a dense show. There's a lot they got to talk about. So
yeah.
I'm glad they didn't just put. Here's my point. Cynical would have been just keep her as a teacher and then not show her. Like, well, she's off at the school teaching. That would have been bad. I like the fact that they at least created something.
Yeah, I do appreciate that she did have agency in saying like, no, I want to go to Bejor, to like, they need me. And when she needed to stay longer, she was like, no, I need to stay. Like, this isn't a conversation. This is my work and I'm doing it. Yeah. And so I respect a lot of those things, in that, you know, committing to what she wants to do for herself, as well as being a mother and like taking Molly with her. That's a really difficult thing. I imagine that is difficult for a father to have to lose his child for a time. And then even when it comes down to when Yoshi is conceived and that whole process, that was just a really phenomenal thing to see on Star Trek, having Kira, you know, host the baby and watching Keiko and Miles work through that. I think that there is a lot more positivity and, again, that realism than what is given when you just think of Keiko O'Brien. Like, most people think she is like this shrill shrew of a woman. And again, I'm not going to go into how that also plays into Asian stereotypes, but there is a lot there to think about. And I challenge people to think about those things when they have that reaction.
All right. On this very special episode of TrekRanks, wow, that's a great topic. I knew it was going to be fantastic. Trek conversation. So let's rattle off some quick secondary systems picks. Heather, who do you got that just missed your list?
So they were all women. Like, it's
awesome.
it's where I go. One that was kind of super obscure was Jem from The Empath.
Oh, that's a cool pick.
Yeah. For someone to really carry an episode that had no money to invest in it, I just thought that she was phenomenal. Like, she was really kind of the focus there, regardless of, you know, what was going on with what McCoy and Kirk and Spock around her. And then I had like number one, but again, like, that's kind of iffy because of, you know, we got a glimpse and then we get her a Discovery and there's still like not enough. I think that my main standout from secondary systems was going to be Ariam from Star Trek Discovery. And she wound up being an extremely controversial character now because of how her death was handled. She's been there the whole time, y'all. Like, she may not have been featured, but she's been there. She's been in episodes. She's been part of the crew. She's been doing things to help their mission. And she sacrificed her life to save everyone. And so I just wish that more people would kind of appreciate what she was, instead of having to have a big conversation about that we didn't get enough of a certain scene 3 episodes ago.
I would refuse to take part in that conversation because really, really narrow. It's people just aren't understanding how things work. That episode, Project Daedalus, is really strong. It was written by Michelle Paradise, who's the new showrunner for Discovery. And the emotion that you get in that episode and what they accomplish with that character is fantastic. And all that other BS around it is just noise. Just completely ignoring it. Okay, Rick, any secondary system picks on your end?
Yeah, I had a few. I thought of Scotty in Relics.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he's totally underappreciated.
Yeah.
But I eliminated that on the basis that Scotty's referred to as a miracle worker almost everywhere else.
Right.
So, Hoshi was high on my list. As I say, I had to get, couldn't find a way to do it without getting angry.
Scotty's a good in-universe underappreciated if you're picking Relics.
Yeah,
that's classic. All right, so I just had a few on my secondary systems. I had Chakotay. I love Chakotay, and I feel like fans hammer him a little too hard. And I had Lily Sloan too, only because I don't think she's necessarily underappreciated, but she should be overappreciated because she's awesome. I don't think she's kind of remembered as much. And then my special shout out, I wasn't going to put her on the list because she's way underappreciated as a character in my book based on my interactions with people watching Discovery, but it is Michael Burnham.
Yeah.
I love this character. It's my favorite thing about Discovery. And every time I kind of see a poll or anything about characters, she's always at the bottom. And people are like, I don't really like Michael, but I like all this. And I'm like, I don't get that. So, but
yeah,
we'll leave that commentary for another day. All right. That was a fantastic, interesting topic. Had no idea what direction it was going to go. A lot of new ground covered here on Trek Ranks tonight. But now it's time to wind down and move into our weekly regeneration cycle.
Computer, activate regeneration cycle. Alcoves beta and gamma.
All right, Heather, let's recap your top 5 underappreciated characters. Hit it.
All right, so my number 5, the episode is Plato's Stepchildren. It is Star Trek TOS, and the character is Alexander, who I just adore so much. My number 4 is Mestral from Star Trek Enterprise, Harbin Creek, or Mistral. Sorry, I say it as it's in front of me because I'm a reader, y'all. Okay, my number 3 is my heart. It is DS9, Sacrifice of Angels, Zial. My number 4, again, my heart, we have a DS9 After Image, Ezri Dax. And then my number 1, I wish we got more of her. Star Trek Enterprise, the episode is 0 Hour, and she is Hoshi Sato.
Awesome list. So you had 2 from DS9 and Enterprise and 1 from TOS and 3 women and 2 men on your list. Awesome. Rick, break down your 5.
Okay, I had from TNG, Commander Calvin Hutchinson from Starship Mine. Again, from TNG, the holographic Moriarty from Ship in a Bottle. From the motion picture, I had Will Decker. And again, from TNG, I had Beverly Crusher and Suspicions. And my number 1 was Voyager, Harry Kim in Unimatrix Zero.
It'd be nobody but Harry Kim in a first list. So you had 3 from TNG, which is awesome, and 1 from TOS and 1 from Voyager, and 4 guys and 1 woman. And on my list, my number 5 was Sulu from Voyager, which doesn't really mix. Flashback, the Voyager episode. My number 4 pick was Tuvok from Voyager, episode Gravity. Number 3 pick, DS9, episode Penumbra, the character Ezri Dax. My number 2 pick, Beverly Crusher, the High Ground from TNG. And my number 1 underappreciated character from Deep Space Nine, In the Hands of the Prophets, Keiko O'Brien, who I think is awesome. So I had 2 from Voyager, 2 from Deep Space Nine, 1 from TNG, and I had 3 women and 2 men as well. So some of the stats, we did have 2 duplicates. We split it right down the middle. So we had 8 men and 7 women out of our 15 picks. For breaking it down by species, we had 8 humans, 2 Trills, 2 Vulcans, and 1 computer hologram. Yes, Moriarty. We could maybe combine Will Decker with Moriarty as kind of a digital entity now that he combined with Beecher. Okay, awesome conversation and picks. I love it. But as we do every week, we've once again entered a temporal causality loop. So before we can depart, it's time to hear from you.
Enterprise has been caught up in a temporal causality loop, and I suspect that something similar may have happened to you.
This week, we're jumping back to episode 52 in our Scenes in Trek series, and this was our top 5 scenes in a brig. Such a fun episode. Always my favorite topic to do our Scenes in Trek. Bunch of deep cut standout picks, and I'm going to relay right now. First up from our good friend Matt Hansen at mhansen0207. 3 of his picks that kind of stood out were Kirk, Spock, and Khan in Into Darkness, and Trek Ranks loves Into Darkness. He He also picked Odo and Thrax in Things Past from Deep Space Nine. Super cool deep cut pick. And from Discovery, The War Without, The War Within, he had that great scene with Cornwell and the Rel in the brig. From Andorian Soup at Andorian Soup on Twitter. I love this pick. He picked all of Lorca's crew in the agony booth. Despite yourself and multi-ambition. That stuff was great in the first season of Discovery. Also, another great pick from Captain Revo, who is at Captain_Revo on Twitter. He picked Martok telling Cisco to kill Gowron in Apocalypse Rising. Another great brig scene that we didn't think of, and pretty sure he's the only person to submit that pick. I love it. Deborah Maltasanti, who we're going to get on the show. She's one of our regulars. She's at Silverdoe25. She had Little Green Men and the Ferengis being held in captivity in Deep Space Nine, which is cool. And then I think my favorite kind of existential pick this week was from our friends Mike and Emily over at Legacy Trek Podcast, who are at Trek Legacy on Twitter. And they picked, who we just talked about, Matt Decker in the Constellation's auxiliary room in the Doomsday Machine, because that was an existential prison that he was in, knowing that he had just killed his entire crew and his life was pretty much over. That is a deep cut pick. As Brilliant. Mike said, way off script was that description. So I love those picks. As always, more than enough to get us out of this week's temporal causality loop. So thanks again, everyone, for sending all your great feedback. Keep those lists coming to me at TrekRanks so we can retweet them. But we also want to hear from you. So put your own list together of top 5 underappreciated characters. Give us a call. We'd love to hear from you directly. You can call us at the Tricorder Transmissions at 609-512-5527. That's 609-512-LLAP. Hopefully we'll hear from you so you can be featured on the next episode of Trek Ranks. And on the next episode of Trek Ranks, we're doing our top 5 road trips. So it's been on our long list for a while. It's just a classic, simple topic. So Heather and Rick, what would you choose off the top of your head as one of your top 5 road trips in Trek history? Anything jumping out at you, Rick?
The first thing that was popping in my head is the entire 7 years of Voyager. But,
well, that might be cheating, but again, we encourage cheating on Trek Ranks. So,
do you love to cheat? Otherwise, I think I would say Picard and Wesley in Samaritan Snare.
Ooh, yes, that's a really good one. I haven't really tried to think about my list yet, but that is a really, really good one. And they have sandwiches.
Absolutely.
Heather, any road trip popping into your head?
How are you defining this?
It's up to you to define. So.
Oh, Lord. That's like, I think anything from like Kirk on a motorcycle and beyond to going like road trip time traveling and Carpenter Street and Enterprise. Like I have all over ideas for that. So
I like Kirk on a motorcycle. That would be like the literal road trip because he's literally on a road on a bike. In a couple of times in the Kelvin time.
Yeah,
I like that.
I'm trying to think if he's ever on the motorcycle into darkness, but I don't think he is. I think it's just 2009 and beyond.
Just the book. That's why people don't like Into Darkness because he first figured it out. Okay, that's awesome. All right, so before we wrap it up, a huge thanks to our guests tonight, Heather Barker and Rick Everson. Hope you guys had fun. Any final Trek thoughts, Heather?
My only final Trek thought, since I have mentioned it a couple times or referred to it, is that I hope everyone will please check out Federation Feminist, which is my new podcast. We don't have our episode out yet. It's coming, but you can follow us at Fed Feminist Pod. And so if you want to hear more about some of the things I brought up tonight, that's where to go.
Fantastic. Rick, hope you had fun, man.
Absolutely loads of fun. I'm totally going to check out that podcast as well because that sounds awesome.
Yay, thank you.
All right. Well, thanks again, everyone, for engaging with us here on episode 57 of the Trek Ranks podcast. As always, I want to close by saying I'm looking forward to standing with you again here in this place where I belong.
Hi there, thanks again for listening. If you're cruising the galaxy looking for even more Trek talk, why not visit our good friends Bill and Dan over at TrekGeeks.com? They've got a great podcast that covers a wide range of Star Trek topics, so you're sure to find something you'll love. And if you're in the mood for some awesome tunes, then you really need to head over to 5yearmission.net. The guys are writing a song for every episode of the original series, and each one is absolutely brilliant. So that's TrekGeeks.com and 5yearmission.net. Check them out today.
I didn't notice a little box on my chair.